He was the man who documented every moment with the love of his life, Barbra Streisand, but now, James Brolin is writing the most painful chapter yet. After 25 years of marriage, what should have been a golden chapter has turned into a battle for time, love, and health. The man who once proposed 3 times before she said yes is now turning down multi-million-dollar roles just to stay by her side. Hollywood producers say he quietly walked away from a $2 million deal, choosing devotion over the spotlight. As medical bills rise and their once-separate finances finally merge, insiders reveal that the couple is facing their most heartbreaking challenge yet. This is not just the story of a Hollywood legend, it's a story of love tested by time and tragedy. And it all began on a sweltering day in Los Angeles, July 18, 1940, when a boy named Craig Kenneth Brolin was born. The world would come to know him as James Brolin. It was 103 degrees the day he entered the world, a scorcher in Los Angeles. His father, Henry, a stern and disciplined contractor, barely made it to the hospital, arriving just 12 minutes before Craig was born. In that house, order was law. From the age of 4, young Craig had daily chores and weekly behavior reviews, drilled into routine like a soldier in training. His mother, Helen, had once been a film extra, but she kept that past a secret. She didn't want her son's head in the clouds, school came first. Craig was a quiet boy, not just by nature, but because of the asthma that gripped him early in life. At just 7, he spent 45 days confined to a hospital bed. And yet, he was brilliant. At 9, he dismantled and rebuilt his father's watch with surgical precision. Teachers saw a budding engineer. But no one expected what came next. At 15, everything changed when Craig saw East of Eden. James Dean wasn't just an actor, he became an obsession. Every Saturday for 6 straight months, Craig pedaled 17 miles alone to Griffith Park, studying Dean's walk, his voice, his presence. In the quiet of his bedroom, a transformation had begun. The boy with asthma was about to become James Brolin. He hid 73 James Dean clippings behind a single poster in his room, like sacred relics of the man he idolized. With over $200 saved from delivering newspapers, he bought himself an 8mm camera and turned his neighborhood into a backlit. He filmed 24 silent reenactments, casting local kids, directing every frame with obsession. When James Dean died in a car crash, Craig didn't speak a word for 11 days. His grief was beyond teenage heartache, it was identity-shattering. Then, without his knowledge, a drama teacher submitted one of his films to UCLA. It won an honorable mention from none other than Nicholas Ray, the very director of Rebel Without a Cause. That single moment ignited something unstoppable in him. He knew he had to act, even if every audition made him physically sick from anxiety. In 1960, the studio said his last name, Brolin, was too German. Change it or be forgotten, they said. He resisted. 7 meetings. 7 pleas. But in the end, the studio renamed him James, a nod to the idol who shaped him. His father didn't speak to him for over a year. His mother mailed the new headshots to distant relatives, trying to explain the change. For 214 nights, James couldn't sleep without pills. And when he finally walked onto a real set, the studio had the nerve to say, "Stop acting like James Dean." The very soul they had built him on, they now wanted erased. James Brolin's early career was a strange mix of persistence and invisibility. He landed minor roles on the Batman TV show, first as a humble bank teller. But the way he dropped the money bags caught the director's eye, and suddenly, he was on camera a little longer. A few months later, a different director unknowingly cast him again, this time as the villain eraser. Brolin even cracked 3 ribs doing his own stunts, earning quiet respect on set. Eventually, even Adam West gave him a 3rd role, and still, no one realized this new face had already been on the show twice. But behind the scenes, Brolin was living in a 1958 Chevy, homeless and showering at the Fox Studios gym. Then, in 1967, everything unraveled. He starred in the Cape Town Affair, a project he warned was doomed. He sent memos, about the tone, the cultural tone deafness, the flat script, but nobody listened. The movie bombed. He was fired while visiting his mother in the hospital. Fox Studios demanded he repay $11,400 of his salary. For the next 18 months, Brolin was dead broke. Hollywood forgot him. He survived by fixing cars in Van Nuys, his hands greasy and unrecognized by clients who had no clue they were being helped by a former TV star. Then fate stepped in, an executive from Universal brought his car in for repairs. Impressed by Brolin's humble grit and work ethic, he offered him a screen test. That test didn't just open a door, it changed James Brolin's life forever. The role of Dr. Stephen Kiley on Marcus Welby MD, which aired from 1969 to 1976, was a huge hit. Brolin played a young doctor on a motorcycle who worked with an older partner. The show was the most watched on ABC and dealt with serious medical issues like cancer, depression, and Alzheimer's. One episode about homosexuality caused protests, but Brolin stayed true to his commitment to telling meaningful stories. In 1972, he played a disturbed Vietnam veteran who hijacks a plane opposite Charlton Heston. The movie was tense and dramatic, and Brolin made the character feel real. Critics said he did a great job, even though it was a characterization. Brolin's next role was as John Blaine in Westworld, 1973, a confident visitor to a theme park where robots looked and behaved like humans. It was a science fiction hit that used early digital effects for the first time. In a shocking scene, Brolin's character is killed halfway through the movie, which made the rest of the movie even more intense. His performance gave the movie depth and contrast. In 1979, Brolin played George Lutz in the horror movie Amityville. Before he got scared while reading the script, his pants fell off a chair by themselves, which he took as a sign. The movie was a huge hit, earning over $80 million at the box office. Brolin's performance as a man slowly falling apart was chilling. It reflected the fears of financial collapse and family pressure that many people felt in the late 1970s. Behind the scenes, he and co-star Margot Kidder fought, but the tension worked for the story. In 1985, Brolin showed his funny side with a cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Where he played a fake version of Pee-wee as a slick secret agent. It was a clever nod to his almost role as James Bond. At the same time, he starred in the TV show Hotel, which ran for 5 years and gave Brolin a stable career. He played Peter McDermott, the polished manager of a fancy San Francisco hotel. Each episode had new drama, new guests, and Brolin at the center. He even directed some episodes. During that run, he got 2 Golden Globe nominations, and Jan Smithers guest-starred while he was having a rough time. Diana Stryand was a school secretary and Emmanuel was a respected teacher. He made $4,200 a year, which wasn't even enough to support the family in their small apartment. When Barbara was only 15 months old, her father died of a seizure. The family had only $250 saved and had to move in with her grandparents. Barbara never got to know her father, but she later found a note he had written in her baby book that said, "I have a feeling this one is going to be special." Barbara's life didn't get better when her mother remarried in 1949 and she got a half-sister. Her stepfather was mean and once told her he would break her spirit. By 1958, Barbara was 16 years old and had already left home. She had nowhere to go and no money for a year and a half, so she stayed on friends' couches, old cots, and even fire escapes in the summer. She only had 1 suitcase with 12 records, 3 outfits, and 2 pairs of shoes. She studied in libraries and diners. Barbara worked part-time for 75 cents an hour and only made $17 a week, but she made it by visiting her mother twice a week just in time for dinner so she could eat without having to say she was homeless. She wore the same coat for 3 years, fixing it up and even dyeing it a different color with costume leftovers. By 1960, Barbara was working as an usher at a theater and making just over $46 a week. She had seen The Sound of Music more than 100 times and knew every scene by heart, and before going to work, she sang in the A stage manager heard her sing and thought she was an understudy. When he asked who she was, she boldly said she was auditioning, even though she wasn't. She sang for 3 casting directors who happened to be nearby. 2 days later, she was performing in a nightclub for $18 over the weekend, which was double her usual pay, but the theater fired her for breaking the rules. It didn't matter, she had just taken her first real step into show business. She had learned to sing by singing in stairwells and subways, testing echoes and drawing small crowds. Later that year, she was staying with her friend Barry Denon in a small, stuffy apartment. He persuaded her to record 3 songs on an old reel-to-reel recorder, and Barbara had to stand still and stay exactly 27 inches away from the mic. When they played back the tape, Barry dropped his coffee mug in shock. He said her voice was like nothing he had ever heard. He played the tape for 14 people in the music business. Some didn't believe it was real, one record executive thought it had been professionally engineered, and wouldn't believe it was a teenager with no training, but the tape was played to them all. Then came the night that everything changed. It was September 1960, and Barbara, who was only 18, walked onto the stage of a nightclub wearing a $6 dress from a thrift store and earrings that didn't go with it. She had already been turned down for 7 auditions that month, with many producers telling her she had a $1 million voice but a 5-cent face. But that night, she sang, "Cry Me a River," and then a funny version of, "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf?" The crowd went silent, and the judges gave her perfect scores for almost 5 minutes, which was the first time that had ever happened there. One harsh critic even wrote that her nose might become as famous as her voice within 2 months. She had 23 paid gigs and had shown that talent didn't have to fit the mold of beauty. In 1961, she took a risk and dropped the second A from her name to become Barbara. She said it made her stand out, and she kept her Brooklyn accent and sang the odd songs she liked. On a cold night, only 7 people came to her show. It worked. Then she went to Broadway in 1962 and played Miss Marlstein in a show called I Can Get It For You Wholesale. The day before the big audition, she had a 103 degrees fever, but she still showed up. The directors almost cut her big scene because it was too weird, but she fought for it, and on opening night, the crowd made her sing it 3 times. She was only a supporting actor, but the reviews only talked about her, and the newspaper called her the. She started out making $175 a week, but her contract was renegotiated 5 times. In 1963, Barbara released her first album. Columbia Records thought it would be a flop because it only had show tunes and ballads and no hits, but it sold 150,000 copies in 1 month. She had full control over the album and chose the songs. She even turned down a color cover in favor of a simple black and white photo, which was against all marketing advice. The album won her a Grammy for Album of the Year. In her short speech, she said, "This isn't luck, this is what happens when you don't listen to people who don't understand your vision." The next year, she played Fanny Brice in Funny Girl. Brice's daughter didn't want her in the role because she thought Barbara was too Brooklyn, too Jewish, and not pretty enough. Investors lost more than $1 million when they heard she got the part, but Barbara slayed it. She performed the role 867 times, missing only 2 shows, even when she had to. She had pneumonia but didn't stop singing. She sang songs written just for her because her voice had a 3.5-octave range. In one scene, a sprinkler broke and soaked her, but she kept singing. The director loved it and added it to the show. When the show went to London, critics were harsh, but by the end, tickets were selling on the black market for £150, which was a ridiculous amount of money at the time. In 1965, she signed a $5 million TV deal with CBS for 10 specials. She was only 23, but the contract gave her full control. CBS couldn't make any changes. They couldn't play commercials during her songs without her permission. In her first special, My Name is Barbara, she broke every rule by starting the show by singing Alone in the Dark. Executives were scared, but 71% of viewers watched that night. She won 5 Emmys, and she even edited the whole show herself. The director later admitted that he had only done what she told him to do. In 1968, Barbra Streisand left Broadway to star in Funny Girl, playing the role that made her famous. On stage, the movie became a huge hit and made a lot of money. The United States named Funny Girl the best movie of the year, and Barbra's performance was so strong that she won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It was her first movie, and even more shocking was that she tied with Katharine Hepburn for the award, the only tie ever in that category. The movie got 8 Oscar nominations, and it proved that Barbra wasn't just a stage star, she was now a movie star too. Years later, the Library of Congress preserved Funny Girl as a national treasure, but in 1972, Barbra didn't just stick to musicals. She took a big chance with What's Up Doc, a crazy comedy with Ryan O'Neal. At first, she didn't like the script and told reporters it would fail, but behind the scenes, big changes were made. Her character was rewritten to be funnier, while O'Neal played the serious one. It worked, and the movie became the third biggest of the year. Barbra made $500,000 for the role, more than her co-star, and critics praised her comedic skills. The film became a classic and is still on top lists of American films. The next year, Barbra starred with Robert Redford in The Way We Were, a movie about a passionate Jewish activist and a charming writer set in a tense political time in America. The film made $50 million, but only cost $5 million to make. Barbra was nominated for another Oscar and won the Top Italian Film Award. The song she sang as the title was the biggest hit of 1974 and sold over 2 million copies. It was later added to the Grammy Hall of Fame. By this time, Barbra wanted more control over her work. In 1972, Barbra started her own production company called Barwood Films. Her first project was Up the Sandbox, a strange but brave movie about a bored housewife escaping into her fantasies. It didn't do well at the box office, but critics praised its brave take on feminism. Roger Ebert said she played a woman who didn't care what anyone thought, which wasn't often seen in movies back then. Then came A Star Is Born in 1976. Barbra not only acted in it, but she also produced it. The movie's love song Evergreen became a huge hit. As the first woman to win an Oscar for writing music, Barbra co-wrote the song and went on to win a Grammy and a Golden Globe. Her performance earned her another Golden Globe, and Evergreen was later ranked as one of her best songs ever. That kind of success didn't come easily. Barbra fought hard for creative control, especially when she directed her first movie, Yentl, in 1983. It took her 15 years to get it made. 12 studios turned her down before one finally gave her a $14.5 million budget. 24 days, she put on tights and led a mostly male crew of 168 people. Some people even bet that she would fail, but she proved them all wrong. The movie made over $40 million, but one voter said he wouldn't vote for her because she was a woman. At that time, only 0.5% of big studio movies were directed by women. When Yentl got great reviews in 1984, the Golden Globes didn't nominate Barbra for the main directing award. Instead, they made up a one-time award just for her best director in a musical or comedy. The next year, that category was taken away, and Barbra politely asked why she wasn't included with the others. Her case became so famous that Congress later used it as proof of gender bias in Hollywood. Years went by, but Barbra didn't give up. In 1991, she returned to directing with The Prince of Tides. It took 26 drafts and 3 years to shape the script. She filmed in hurricane-damaged South Carolina, hiring dozens of locals who had lost their homes. The movie made $63 million and won 7 Oscars. It was the first time a woman had ever been nominated by the Directors Guild, but she didn't get a Best Director nomination from the Oscars. People were even more upset when they learned that 94% of Oscar voters for directors were men. In 1995, Barbra made even more history when she directed her concert special for HBO and won the Directors Guild Award for television directing, becoming the first woman to ever win in that category. The show had 11 cameras, 125 crew members, and 223 camera setups, all while she was fighting cancer. Since a concert in 1967 where she forgot the words, Barbara had crippling stage fright that kept her off the stage for 27 years. The special drew 26 million viewers and made $93 million at the ceremony. Barbara pointed out that only 3.7% of TV directing jobs had gone to women. Her win came 25 years after she first fought the DGA on that issue. Behind the scenes, Barbara's personal life was often painful. She married actor Elliot Gould in 1963 and their son Jason was born in 1966. Barbara was in charge of a $1 million tour when she found out she was pregnant and loved being a mom. She often brought Jason to work with her, but their marriage didn't do well because Gould was addicted to drugs and gambling. He sold their things to pay for his habit, and Barbara was afraid that would hurt their child. They split up in 1969 and got divorced in 1971. James Brolin and Barbra Streisand met on a blind date on July 1, 1996. It almost didn't happen because both were in their mid-50s and had been in failed relationships. Streisand had been divorced since 1971, and Brolin had just ended his second relationship. Marriage and owed $1.4 million, their friend Linda Bruckheimer set them up after they had cancelled plans to meet up twice before. Brandon was supposed to meet another woman that night but changed his mind at the last minute. He took a Valium because he was nervous and stressed, and he was expecting a rugged guy with a beard but found him clean-shaven for a different role. They talked for 6 hours and later found out they were only 3 years old. In the first 30 seconds, Streisand asked him, "Who messed up your hair?" She wasn't being mean, but it hurt Brolin a lot because his ex-wife hadn't said anything nice about his looks in 11 years. That one comment stuck with him, and he almost left, but something in her eyes made him stay. The night ended at 3:27 a.m., with her asking for a lock of his hair, which she kept and now frames in their home with a picture of them together. Later, in a scribbled note, she said that she felt he was different from the 28 blind dates she had been on over the past 3 years. Brandon tried to propose 3 times. The first time was 87 days after they met in a hot air balloon over Napa Valley. He gave her a 3.9-carat diamond worth $250,000, but she said no because she had a 2-year rule after a bad experience with a previous fiancé. The second time, he proposed on New Year's Eve 1997 in New York while playing her favorite childhood song and knelt down in front of 14 friends. She said no again. The third time, it worked, March 15, 1998, during a picnic at her Malibu home. He gave her a 24-page letter with 98 reasons they belonged together. What he did not know then, what she best revealed in her memoir years later, turned into that she was secretly engaged to every other man when they first met. She broke it off after their 5th date. They married exactly 2 years after their first date on July 1, 1998. The marriage price $1.4 million. It turned into hell that Streisand's Malibu domestic protection became tight. There had been 37 guards, a no-fly sector, and NDAs with $250,000 penalties. The ceremony began at 8:47 p.m. The precise time they first met, there had been 15,000 white roses and orchids flown in from 4 countries. Guests covered Tom Hanks, Oprah Winfrey, the Clintons, and Marlon Brando. Streisand wore a gown with a 27 toes train. Brolin wore an Armani in shape. With diamond cufflinks. She wrote a tune for the ceremony known as "I've Subsequently Found You," executed by using a kids' choir from her basis on the reception. Brolin gave a speech at 11:43 p.m. It had 273 words. Streisand had it framed. He stated, "Every night time is a brand new adventure. Slumbering is a waste of time. I can't wait to look her once more in the morning." He had battled insomnia for 27 years. She became his treatment. They'd spent 642 nights collectively before the marriage. They studied poetry in bed, did crossword puzzles, and shared reminiscences. They by no means informed everybody else that night time. Brolin additionally performed a piano piece he had secretly discovered called Barbara's Lullaby, misspelling her call as an inner shaggy dog story. John Travolta later said Brolin had saved a magazine of each day they'd spent together, which he deliberate to present her on their 25th anniversary. They reached that milestone in 2023. From the start in their marriage they saved separate financial institution money owed. They known as it bifurcation. It turned into Brolin's concept after losing $3 million in his 2D divorce. He said they even break up dinner bills every Tuesday. Streisand became worth $400 million. And Brolin had $60 million, so this helped hold things identical. They shared simply one account with $800,000 for the residents. In a 2023 interview, Brolin said this setup stored them from cash fights that ruined different Hollywood marriages for the duration of the COVID-19 lockdown. Their bond grew even stronger at the same time as many couples break up. They fell in love all once more. They spent 425 nights in a row together. They awoke at 6:45 and contemplated and made breakfast. They did 37 puzzles, one for each feasible year of marriage. They watched The Crown and Bridgerton twice and acted out scenes in gown. They even wrote a $278-page magazine in the course of lockdown that Brolin hinted could become a memoir. Their $35,000 Swedish bed became their headquarters. They referred to as it the boardroom. It had special help settings for both of them, spots for documents and pillows that turned into computer stands. They made large career choices from that bed. Strury even wrote songs for her 2018 album whilst mendacity. There they spent 4 to 6 hours a day on that mattress. Their bedroom became soundproofed at a cost of $175,000. Roland said maximum and their great thoughts got here from that quiet area. After they fought they took walks. It wasn't just random. They followed strict rules, no telephones, deep breaths every 30 steps, and that they walked in contrary guidelines round their 3.2-acre property. After 17 minutes they returned and wrote magazine entries approximately how they felt. They used this technique at least 217 times as soon as throughout a combat. About Strurian's e-book in 2019, they took 7 walks over 3 days. Even on excursion they asked resort body of workers for separate strolling paths. Brolin said strolling helped their brains chill out and solve troubles naturally. Strury additionally stayed busy with her ardor for women's heart fitness. She released the Fight the Woman Killer marketing campaign in 2014. She turned into shock to research heart sickness kills more ladies than all cancers blended. She helped fund a heart middle at Cedars-Sinai, and driven for more cognizance she gave a major lecture at the Countrywide Institutes of Health in 2018. She spoke about how girls often worsen coronary heart remedy than men. Her marketing campaign helped lower the wide variety of deaths from 1 in 3 ladies to 1 in 4. She additionally spent 10 years writing her memoir My Call As Barbara. It got here out in 2023 and become 970 pages long. She wrote all of it through hand. She had started out thinking about it again in the 1990s. Even Jacqueline Kennedy, as soon as asked her to write down it, critics praised its honesty and fashion. Brolin joked that she in all likelihood wrote most of it in mattress on their fancy mattress. As of 2025 Brolin is 83 and nonetheless operating. He advised Humans magazine, "I don't plan on preventing." He changed into filming Ransom Canyon and narrating the very last season of Candy Tooth. He joked that Stryan made fewer movies, however he made up for it with quantity: 97 movies and 600 hours of TV. He said what excites him maximum is the following mission Ransom Canyon delivered Brolin lower back to westerns. He performed a rancher named Cap Fuller who dies in episode 9. He wished his person had stayed longer. The show was also Netflix's first fundamental solar-powered production. It changed into film throughout 150 mi in New Mexico. Around the same time Brolin finished narrating all 3 seasons of Sweet Teeth. He mentioned his lengthy records with horses and said directing become nevertheless his preferred, but performing saved him energized.